Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Knapich.
And I'm Bob Muller. The movies we're going to be talking about today are Shaft.
Directed by Gordon Parks.
Superfly.
Directed by Gordon Parks Jr. And for those of you out there, Blaxploitation is spelled
B-L-A-X.
What is that, Bob?
B-L-A-X.
Exploitation.
There you go. Get your Webster's Dictionary out. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
So, here we are, Blaxploitation. Yeah, the first Hollywood studio to release a film, it was Shaft by MGM, directed by
Gordon Parks, who was a famous photographer, right, John?
He worked for Vogue and Life magazine.
Yeah, he did street photography first, right? And then later went on to Vogue.
And it was written from...
A screenplay was written by Ernest Tiedemann from his novel, and also by John D.F. Black.
So let's talk about Shaft.
He's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks. That's something we have to get out of the way.
So, Shaft is a private eye. He's a pretty suave guy.
He's very cool. I mean, I got to say, I love the opening sequence when, you know, we're coming down 42nd Street. John, the real 42nd Street back from the 1970s.
Thank you very much.
Yes, we're not talking about the new 42nd Street.
Circa 1971.
Back when it was dirty and filthy, and boy, oh boy, does it look dirty and filthy there. You got Richard Roundtree as Shaft walking down the street, and you got the Can't Be Beat theme song to Shaft by Isaac Hayes, which is just the best ever for an opening sequence that you could ask for. And as it starts to pan down, I love this. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of this too, and you've seen it. We're seeing the marquees. Yeah. And this is what 42nd Street was like way back then in the 70s. You got first off, you got Little Foss and Big Halsey with Robert Redford and Michael Pollard, and then the next marquee is School for Sex with the second big hit of Wild Females. Have you seen either of those, John?
I've not seen those, but that was back in the day when you can go and spend 75 cents and see 3 movies.
There you go.
And Times Square.
You can't beat it. And then after the next marquee came up, it's the Scalp Hunters. And then it's on a big double bill with Rough Night in Jericho, starring Dean Martin and George Peppard.
I have to say, I was never a fan of Westerns that included Dean Martin. It just never fit.
I thought he was a pretty good actor. I don't know.
It was like some guy got out of a taxi cab in Dodge City. Like, where'd he come from with that accent?
His hair was really well groomed, wasn't it, for a Western?
And the other thing about that opening montage, which is excellent, there's actually a scene a little later on where they're having hot dogs at the old Knapich.
Knapich, oh yeah. I saw
corner.
The Knapich. Yeah, great. Yeah. You know, orange soda was the Knapich.
Yeah, Knapich was orange soda and hot dogs. It was a great place.
But the opening credits is great, and I got to say that Richard Roundtree, you know, he was a pretty brave guy. The director just said, okay, Rich, just walk across the street, Times Square. You know, the cars will stop for you. So, he was pretty brave to do it.
There was no crowd control.
Absolutely no crowd control. They just ran the cameras, you could tell. And all of a sudden, he stands in front of the car like Ratso Rizzo and says, well, it doesn't say we're walking here. It just says up yours. But, I got to give Richard Roundtree a lot of credit.
In that big leather coat, as you said, badass walking down the street who's not going to stop for him.
I guess. That's true.
So he gets to his office, which I love the fact that it's in Times Square. Right. And it's the corner office. That's such a Raymond Chandler kind of thing.
Very Philip Marlowe. Yeah, I agree.
And what happens? He gets there. Someone's looking for him.
They got a couple of guys, and they want to bring him up to Bumpy. Played by Julius Harris, great actor. And so the two guys come in and a fight starts. Now, I have to say this about Gordon Parks because the thing that's cool about Gordon Parks is he was a photographer and he understood how to compose things. So I found this really interesting, the way the point of view shots were with the fight, because you saw the fist coming toward you and you got like the blur of the face, and sometimes the guy would stumble back and be kind of blurry and then all of a sudden come into focus. It gave you a real sense of you were there, kind of interaction with the with the fight.
And that didn't look like a studio to me. That looked like a real location. But I just have to say, throwing the guy out the window?
Pretty cool.
Hey, did he die?
He screamed awfully loud, so I don't think he made it.
But I thought, did he just murder the guy? And
absolutely.
And then the lieutenant, Androsi.
It's sort of like Batman in the 30s. Just, throw a guy off a building? Sure, why not?
The next scene where he's trying to go back uptown, big bad Shaft trying to hail a cab, and the taxi drives past
off.
him.
Yeah.
Times have not changed.
No, they haven't.
Don't pick up the black guy.
I heard a story about Danny Glover having the same problem. He was on the Johnny Carson show, and he was saying the same thing. He started laughing. Johnny Carson was horrified.
So Shaft, Bumpy comes down to see Shaft in his office. In his office in Times Square. Yeah. And his daughter's been kidnapped. So now he wants Shaft to find his daughter.
Right.
Shaft then has to go find Ben Buford. And then there's this excellent montage through early 70s Harlem of Shaft going around trying to find this guy, but he stops in on all these great locations.
And the first guy he asks a question of is?
Gordon Parks Sr.
Gordon Parks, the director.
Answers the door.
Yeah. A little Hitchcock, little cameo.
And then he's walking, there's these great location shots of Harlem, and the search ends with...
Antonio Fargas, of course.
Huggy Bear.
Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch. Absolutely.
But it's a speaking role, and that's pretty early. That must have been like one of his first speaking roles.
It has to be.
I just kind of like watching the scenes go by. It's just because it's like this really great time capsule to old New York.
I liked all the great 70s location stuff that really is enticing. I grew up in Jersey, so this was like, this is like seeing some other planet or something. It was really amazing to see. Richard Roundtree, I thought, was very good in the role. He has a lot of screen presence, and I was really impressed with that. And he carries it off. And what I liked about him is he has a sense of humor, which kind of harkens back to the sarcastic sense of humor of Philip Marlowe and that sort of detective thing. So I thought that worked really well. The saving grace for me is the fantastic soundtrack by Isaac Hayes. I mean, as soon as Isaac Hayes' music comes on the screen, it comes alive.
And that was a big deal back then, that soundtrack.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was a big hit.
It was on the radio, man. It was on all the time. It was great.
You could not get away from that soundtrack.
No, WABC in New York City, they played it all the time.
Theme to Shaft.
Yeah, absolutely. Great song. Great song.
There's this interesting thing in the movie where it's Shaft's friend Ben Buford, who's the neighborhood revolutionary. He's kind of taken this path, and he's pitted against Bumpy. Bumpy's like the classic gangster. He's got the big suits, the hats, and the whole idea is what? The mob wants to move into Harlem.
Yeah.
So they have his daughter. And Shaft and Ben Buford, he teams up with the revolutionaries to get the girl back. There's a really interesting scene where Shaft goes downtown and he goes into this bar, and it's got the gay bartender.
By the way,
like
just for the record, worst actor doing a gay role I've ever seen.
I thought, if you put yourself back in 1971, I thought that was pretty cool. Well,
Shaft's not a macho guy because he's hanging no problem with this gay guy.
Yeah, he's very casual with him.
Very friendly with the guy.
He gets behind the bar. But what was interesting is the two mob characters are sitting in the bar.
Yeah.
Shaft pretends to be the bartender.
Right.
This big black guy is a bartender, or the gay bartender. Everybody's kind of pretty street savvy.
Right.
Back in the day, you think everybody's kind of a stereotype, and you would assume these Italian mobsters from Cleveland, they would have this kind of like, racist attitude, but they're all down with it, and it's interesting.
Because they're watching his apartment. They're watching Shaft's apartment. That's what they're sitting there for. They're watching his apartment.
That's one of these interesting things about the film is, Shaft does most of his work in Harlem. His office is in Times Square, but he's got this bachelor pad in like chic Greenwich Village.
He is the sex machine.
He's a Renaissance man. And for a movie that's trying to appeal to black audiences, I thought, wow, this guy is so comfortable on all levels of society.
Yeah.
Is that like something empowering, or does that take away his edge in a way? I don't know.
I don't think it takes away from his edge because he when he has to, he is the tough guy. Not everybody can throw somebody out the window like that with such casual flair.
He's pretty friendly with the lieutenant, though. That's what I thought was interesting.
Yes,
so.
And the lieutenant's good with him.
He chides him a lot.
He breaks his balls a little bit here.
One of the best lines. Come on, Shaft. What is this black shit?
And he puts the black pen up to his face to show how black he's not. Yeah, it was actually very funny. And then he slaps him fly when he goes out the office for the
really
day.
Funny watching the middle-aged Italian guy trying to slap Chef 5. Very smooth. And then the funny thing is, the end of the movie is this big kind of shootout in this kind of seedy hotel in the village.
I like the scene, but I just felt, what was driving me crazy, I just felt it took too long to get going. It just took so long to get going. I love the mafia guys standing outside. I love when Ben Buford comes up. He's dressed as a bellboy or a waiter or something.
So let me step back.
Yeah.
Shaft has he's recruited Ben and a bunch of his buddies who are fellow militants.
Yeah.
Thank you. And they're going to go to this hotel and spring this girl who's with the mobsters are holding her in this hotel.
Bumpy's daughter.
What was interesting is there's one of the weak points of the movie I thought was all the mobsters are dressed like 1940s mobsters. It's like they went
Hey,
to
folks, we want to make sure you know he's a mobster here.
Let's go to the wardrobe department and pull out some of these old suits. This is just what we had available.
Mafia uniforms. Yeah, okay, take 3 off the rack. Then we got a short guy and a tall guy. So, but it's a very funny scene when you got Ben Buford coming up. He's in a waiter's outfit and he walks up. He's just trying to eyeball and see what do we got to do to get in there. And the guy spots him. And he goes, hello there. And he goes, look, why don't you get me a Coke and a coffee? So he plays along with it. Ben Buford has no choice. Oh, he actually calls him "Hey boy," which is a militant guy being called boy.
Right, and there's a lot of that.
You would think he would spontaneously combust right then and there.
I do want to say one thing about the hotel.
Yeah,
I don't know if this was coincidental, but it's a pretty interesting location. It's pretty seedy, and it's got red halls. Taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly.
Shootout scene in Taxi
Absolutely.
Driver. I saw that and I'm like, what if Marty saw this? Seriously, because it looks just like
I agree with you. Absolutely.
And it certainly predates Taxi Driver.
And it gives an eerie feeling to it.
Yeah, it's a weird location. Yeah. And back then, and I'm sure there are some now, but like New York was dotted with like seedy hotels, all over the place.
You can't get a good seedy hotel anymore.
No more single room occupancy hotels. The old SRO.
The SRO.
Yeah.
So once again, I defer to my good friend John Knapich, who is a consummate New Yorker, grew up in the Bronx, and he knows. Okay,
that was Shaft. It seemed like some of the action scenes were thrown in there to kind of jumpstart the plot, keep it going.
Gordon Parks, did really well with the opening sequence and some other stuff, and I just felt that these scenes just went on for me forever, where just the camera's locked.
I think that's because it's like a Hollywood film, and there's like a huge crew.
It's just Dullsville. I love the Isaac Hayes stuff. I like the fight scene at the end a lot once it started going, but you can't beat it when Shaft comes swooping down. I mean, I know that's the poster.
That's the poster.
But he comes swooping down, kicks in the glass, shoots the gangster, and saves the girl.
And when you were a kid and you saw that poster, you just watched the whole movie waiting for that moment to happen.
That's it. Exactly.
But you got to think about it. Like, here are these guys, militants, some private eye. Who got the idea to rappel down the side of a building? Where'd they get that equipment? Is this like Guns in Navarone? What's happening?
It's the coolest scene in the movie. So we're going to give it some license because, having to come in through the window and just shooting it up, saving the girl.
And you're right about the dialogue in the story because it's basically Hollywood's reaction to this kind of independent black film, Sweetback.
Yeah.
But they can't take the Hollywood shackles off of it. It just feels like Hollywood.
It's unfortunate. And Richard Roundtree, can really fill up a screen. So we go from Shaft to another movie that's probably just as famous, if not more famous in some ways. Also a great soundtrack. It's Superfly, and that was produced in 1972, directed by, interestingly enough, Gordon Parks Jr.
I think back in the day, Superfly had more street cred. And part of that has to do with it definitely has a more independent feel to it and much more authentic feeling.
It's a total independent film. You can feel it. And you can feel it's kind of a man on the street and let's see what happens kind of thing. I love the opening shot. And it's very much a 70s shot. It's a high wide angle shot, and it obviously a zoom lens, and they slowly zoom into these two junkies standing down there arguing about something. Now, the acting's pretty damn bad. Yeah. Having said that, for me, the voiceover is what's the bad acting.
The dubbing.
Yeah, it's a dubbing job. It's just pretty awful them doing it. But as they're walking down the street, it's very interesting because the one guy with the knit hat, he looks like he's hopped up or something because he's bouncing around and bouncing all over the place. He stops at one point and he asks this girl for change. See her expression.
She looks at the camera at one point.
Yeah, she doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Who's this guy? You need change. I guess. Here, take some change.
It's a really nice montage of them walking through the streets, I thought. And it's like very cinema verite because these are not extras, the other people on the street.
Absolutely not.
They're like, some of them catch the camera, they're looking at the camera, they're looking at the two actors,
but
like, what the hell's going on?
It doesn't really hurt
it adds to the flavor.
It almost looks like they're looking at the guys walking by or something.
Yeah.
It's not a problem at all. He goes up to the shoe shine guy, and he just grabs something off the shoe shine guy's
right. He steals it. Yeah. The guy turns, and he runs off.
And he runs off with it. And you're like, what did he just do that for? So I got to give this guy, he maybe he didn't go to the actor studio, but he definitely had some method thing going on there.
He definitely did some improv.
I bought it. I definitely bought it. So the bad acting in the beginning, I think, was really due to maybe them doing the
dubbing. Dubbing back then wasn't very good.
No.
It was just kind of very clunky, and I love that open. It puts you on the street, and I think a lot of people reacted to that. There was something real about Superfly, and of course we have to start with Ron O'Neal.
Ron O'Neal
as Priest.
Ron O'Neal has a lot of screen presence.
Yeah,
I was very impressed with him.
He's very heartfelt. There's a very real sensitivity.
Yeah,
to
sensitivity, exactly. But he can really be have this sort of menace when he is pushed to a certain extreme.
But you could tell right away in the first scene when you see him, he's in bed with some girl and he's snorting coke. He just looks like a guy that is so sick of his job, and he's a dealer. You could tell he's been doing this a long time. You could feel like the weight of the world on him.
One of my favorite shots I thought was very interesting in the movie is when he gets out of bed with the beautiful white girl. They put this shot together, and it's a crotch shot. They're basically showing what Priest has to offer. You got the actress in bed, and she's basically she wants her man back because
that's called a come hither shot.
Come hither shot.
And the great thing about the apartment, he's kind of like he's a dealer, but he's got more of a soul. He's got more brains.
Yes.
He's got some nice African art. It's a very tasteful apartment. It's not like what you would think of a drug dealer.
This man of the slums got a brain. He wasn't dumb.
Yeah. Is that the
That's
line?
From the song.
Okay.
In the beginning, he gets robbed by the junkies. So unsuspecting Ron O'Neal, Priest, comes in. They just whack him in the head and they try to rob him. But he's a cool guy, a tough guy. He's not going to take this. So he beats up the one guy, and then he takes off after the other junkie with the knit cap. What was amazing to me was how realistic this chase scene was. During the chase, the guy with the knit hat, he's running full out.
Yeah.
He turns a corner into this
abandoned
lot with a car sitting there, and he hits this side view mirror. Oh my God, like you can't believe. And I got to give him all the credit in the world. He hits this thing so hard, he falls down, and he gets right up like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. I couldn't believe it. I'm just like, wow. But the guy gets up.
So they didn't pay for a stunt double.
Yeah, exactly. So let me tell you something. That guy is possibly the best method actor I've ever seen in my life. Lee Strasberg in the actor studio, they never taught that thing. You never saw Marlon Brando fall down and get up again like that.
And what's great about that chase scene is it's through abandoned lots. You see the garbage everywhere. You couldn't build this set.
Yeah.
It's really sad in a way. There's so much poverty. And then they go.
But Ron O'Neal, I'm sorry, but Ron O'Neal is still chasing this guy full out.
He's hustling his butt. Yeah,
and
running.
once again, no stunt double. So he does a flying leap like a gazelle over this fence.
Yeah.
And at that moment, if he was like an inch off, his whole stud career would have been over.
And there's a great shot where they burst. He chases the guy through the building, and he bursts through this apartment.
Into the window.
And it's just like, again, that's a real location. It's just like this woman and this baby in the apartment. The oven's on, heating the apartment. There's blankets covering the windows.
Right.
You couldn't set dress that.
But he's in the building. He's lying there. Kicks him in the stomach till he vomits, and the kids are looking on, and the mom's looking on like, oh, okay, like this happens every day.
Let's talk about the style in this film. First of all, he's got this Cadillac Eldorado with the peace sign lights.
The peace sign lights and the Rolls Royce.
Oh, Rolls Royce hood ornament. That set off a whole trend with cars.
But
do you remember the 70s? People would pimp their cars to no end.
Well, there you go, the pimp mobile.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is this. In the movie, There's an actual pimp. His name is KC.
Yeah.
It's his car.
It's his car.
It's his car.
Exactly. And the wardrobe. In the movie, Priest's dealer, Nate Adams, he's the guy that came up with the wardrobe.
All that style, the suits, the jackets, the pants, all of that, and including the car, was that guy.
But think of it. Think of all the stuff. Maxi coats.
Right.
Platform shoes.
Absolutely.
Big collars.
This became the thing.
Big influence on 70s urban fashion.
It's just perfect. And he is nothing but style. He's got this furry hat, kind of whitish cream, and he's got this big, long fur coat. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. There is no way any white guy could pull it off for a second. He is all style, and he pulls it off completely.
It did set off all this style for the 70s. Kids were wearing this stuff.
Yeah. And eventually, certain styles worked their way into, the suburbs of New Jersey where I grew up.
And then there's an interesting scene where he goes to the crap game, and because he's going to go see his partner, Eddie. Now, Eddie's an interesting character.
Yeah.
The whole plot of the movie is Priest wants to get this $1 million drug score so that he can quit the life. But Eddie's not about that.
That's very Easy Rider. That's very Easy Rider, because that's the whole premise of Easy Rider.
Right, and but Priest has again, he has a soul. He's like, what is it? He doesn't even know what he's looking for exactly because he couldn't articulate it in the film.
Right.
But he just wants to get out of this life. And Eddie's more the realist. He's like, man, this is all we have. This is all society gives us. Yeah.
My favorite line between Eddie and Priest. Both Eddie and Priest come into their apartment, and Priest says, he says, Eddie, I'm getting out. And Eddie goes, you gonna give all this up? 8-track stereo, color TV in every room, and you can snort a half a piece of dope every day? That's the American dream.
Certainly is.
Hey, 8-track stereo, that was a hell of a format,
Yeah, we had Black Sabbath Volume 4 on 8-track. Halfway through a track, it would click to the next track.
I love the fade out myself. That's always great. You're really getting going, and all of a sudden, and it fades back and
click.
Yeah, clunk. The American dream. 8-track stereo.
So we're talking about Eddie. Carl Lee as Eddie was a great actor. There's a scene where Priest is looking for Eddie, and he goes to this crap game. And there's all these players there throwing dice and stuff. And
that scene has menace to it, I got to say.
Yeah.
That scene has genuine menace.
But Eddie's like winning some money, and Priest wants him. He needs him. He's his partner. He takes him away from the game, and he's breaking up the game. Yeah. And these guys are pissed off that they can't
win their money back.
One of the big guys,
who's
he's about to go after Priest.
Right.
He's like, you white-looking mother. I was like, whoa, that's such an interesting...
Well, he's light-skinned.
There's a little racial tension.
I'd say in that scene there's a lot of racial tension.
But, here's this smooth drug dealer guy. He's all well-dressed and everything. He's a little cultured. He's got light skin, and that comes up. It's a very interesting scene in the movie, and they go right past it, though.
But interestingly enough, once again with the same theme, the militants in Shaft, they actually give him shit. They go, they call him Tom at one time.
That's right.
So that's pretty interesting that both times, are you black enough?
Black enough, or like Shaft, you're kind of leaving the neighborhood. You know what I mean? That's the whole
that's a good point.
Tension there with Shaft is like he's living in the village, his office is in Midtown, but there's a tension there because you're leaving the neighborhood.
Right. You were talking about style before.
Yeah.
And, once again, it's the 70s and you have this really great, fast film stock. And they're just shooting available light. And there's a scene, a dark street, nothing except a car driving down the street, but the Curtis Mayfield music makes that
Pusher Man.
I'm pretty sure it's Pusher Man. Really terrific.
Yeah.
And it makes that whole scene sing. And if you took that music out, you'd probably fall asleep within the first 2 seconds because there's just nothing really happening. But the music,
it's a great soundtrack.
It's a great soundtrack.
I just have to go back to the crap game for one thing. There's a scene with
you're not going to get off that crap game.
No, because this is the whole thing between Eddie and Priest.
Right.
Priest tells him he wants to get this $1 million to get out of the game. Priest is like, I know it's a rotten game. It's the only one the man has left us. And the man.
That comes up a lot, the man.
That's the whole thing with the culture they're portraying is like, if you want to succeed and you're poor black, you're not getting a job at General Motors.
Right.
You know, this is what's left for you.
Right.
And there's a lot of criticism with black exploitation because you're portraying our population as dealers or prostitutes.
Well, the hero is a drug deal. I mean,
he's a drug
deal. A priest is a drug dealer.
Well, I think what
he's the hero of the movie.
I think what the filmmakers are saying is, in this time and place, this is the only way these guys can get ahead.
Right.
No one's giving them breaks.
Right.
They're not going to be on the police force. They're not going to be an executive, and they're not getting in college.
And
this is what they have.
And who controls the drugs?
The man, and we learned that, right?
White guys.
Of course.
Yeah. So we have them controlling it. If you want to make some money, you got to get that from the man, and you stand out on the street corner, like in the song "Freddy's Dead."
Right.
Freddy's on the street corner now. My favorite sequence is the still photography sequence.
Awesome.
Also, using Curtis Mayfield's Pusher Man, I mean, so effectively. And what's interesting is the still shots are done by, it says in the credits, but the still shots are done by Gordon Parks Jr., who is a photographer.
I knew you would love that scene because I watched it, and it's a great photography scene. I'm like, I know Bob's a photographer.
It's very beautifully done because it tells this entire story through just these photographs, and they're really neatly shot. You feel like you're watching moving footage.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it
tells
is
the whole story.
Think about it. It's a low-budget film. How do you get all this exposition?
Exactly.
It's like
he didn't have to spend that much money. Take some photographs, put it and make a montage.
It's like he found 5 guys, went out one day, did all these photography, and you get all this exposition. You got like the dealing to businessmen who are white and black in the montage, construction workers
with the helmet on.
There's a couple of gay guys in there.
Of course. Whoever's doing it in the montage is doing cocaine. The black guys look cool. They look like they got it down. The white guys always look goofy, especially the construction worker.
In bed.
Yeah, he's got his eyes crossed and stuff. So
he's like zonked out.
We're making a little statement here, I think, for the audience as well, right? Because they all look goofy, period.
You need a little comedy in a photo montage.
It was funny. So another scene that I really liked was a scene in the bar with Eddie and Priest.
Yeah.
And this group of guys sees him come in. They're militant guys. These guys want some money for him because he's the drug dealer, and he's taking money out of the neighborhood, and he's getting these kids hooked on dope and stuff, and he's not doing anything for these people except getting money for himself. So now he wants the militants say, we want money from you. We want payback from you. And Priest, who is a businessman, says, I ain't giving you shit. Now, I'll tell you what you do. You go get you a gun, and all those black folks you keep doing so much talking about, get guns, and come back ready to go down, and I'll be right down front killing Whitey. Now, I got to tell you, as a white guy, it kind of sent a chill up my spine.
Yeah.
But if I was a black guy in the 70s in Harlem, I would say, okay, you know what? I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Yeah. And it's
So-
not clear what they want the money for.
Exactly.
It's like, I was like, well, do they want it to give back to kids, or do they want it to buy guns and continue the revolution? Who knows?
I think
it's an interesting scene.
In essence, I think they're doing kind of a shakedown to Priest because he's a drug dealer.
It's a shakedown, definitely.
Right.
Yeah. And so they go to Scatter's bar.
Yeah.
Because that's where he's going to ask Scatter for this large supply of cocaine. Because Scatter's supposedly got something stashed away.
He was the guy who had all the coke at that time that he dealt with Priest.
Right.
Actually, he knows Priest since he's a little kid.
Right. He brought Priest up.
Right.
Basically.
Yeah.
And Priest is the number one dealer. Now Priest wants a bigger part of the pie.
Right.
So he goes to this bar. And what I thought was funny, it's actually a really cool scene. There's all these kind of street types in this bar. And there's a band playing on the stage.
And who's the lead singer in this band, Joe?
Would that be Curtis?
Curtis Mayfield, yes.
And then there's a scene where Freddie's arrested and the cops grab him. Now, that's a pretty brutal scene. So the cops pick up Freddie because they find him beating some guy up with brass knuckles and a lot.
Right.
But they take him in for interrogation.
Right.
And that's a pretty brutal scene.
Yes.
I mean, it's like this is back in the day when you can like turn the tape recorders off and beat suspects.
They don't have any
into
cameras going or
submission.
anything out. They just a little strong arm, to say the least. But then he escapes when they're taking him out.
Yeah.
He runs, he tries to get away, and then gets hit by the car.
Right.
And he dies. Now, I always thought Freddie's dead from drugs.
That's
based on
what
the
I
song.
thought.
So
I thought Freddie overdosed.
I'm a little confused on that one, but I still love the Curtis Mayfield song
I
regardless.
think Curtis was taking poetic license. It was a great title.
Yes.
Freddie's Dead. That's a great title.
Yes,
so
it is.
however you get to that, it works for the song.
It makes the movie come alive. It's one of the best soundtracks of the genre right along with Shaft and even Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man.
I mean, that kind of leads to this interesting scene, and they don't tell you about what's going on, but you suddenly see Priest. He's downtown. He goes into this bar, or whatever it is, and he sits down with these two kind of Italian-looking guys. And they're
one of my favorite scenes. And what I love about that scene is it's all done. There's no dialogue.
Yeah.
Once again, John, what's it all about?
All about budget.
You bet it is. But it's brilliant because it's all done. They are using Curtis Mayfield's.
Right.
They're using Curtis Mayfield's soundtrack over the top of this. And you get the sense of what's going on without dialogue. They don't have to go inside with cameras and shoot all this stuff. They can do it for nothing. Just have them sit down at a thing. And we don't quite know. We know something's going on.
You see Priest give them an envelope.
Money. Right, we'll give him an envelope. Right, yeah.
So Priest, he's finally got his money. He runs out the apartment, and we see Eddie get on the phone to the cops.
Right.
Now we think, oh, great. He's going to get out the building, and he's going to get arrested by the cops. But what happened?
And he's as good as dead.
Yeah.
But waiting for him is his black girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
She's got this kerchief over her head, and she's got this sweater, shawl kind of thing. She has a shopping bag, and inside the shopping bag is another briefcase. Priest pulls the briefcase out, or not that easily pulls the briefcase out. He's struggling to get the damn thing out.
That's right.
And he pulls on it, and if you look closely, they must have been doing this scene many times and didn't have a lot of budget, or certainly didn't have another shopping bag, because you can see that it's been retaped inside with all this crisscross duct tape. Just a little low budget production value there. So he pulls the briefcase, and you can just tell that he's probably been doing this for 2 hours, and he just rips it out, and now he has to shove the other briefcase with the money in it. He's got a decoy briefcase in his hand. He puts the other one with the money in.
So Priest
lets the girlfriend go outside.
The ambush is on.
He already knows it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tarantino stole that for Jackie Brown. Watch the movie. Yeah.
Interesting. So the scene there I find interesting in kind of a funny way. The end fight scene, it looks like it was staged in slow motion, and they shot it in slow motion because it's going so deliberately.
It's the poor man's slow motion.
Yeah, it's very much so. So Priest mouths off and says something to Reardon, and the fight ensues. One of the henchmen comes, one of the cops comes, and goes to punch him. But what's interesting is this. Now, I didn't know that Reardon also doubled as David Copperfield, because at one point he completely disappears.
That's right.
When the scene starts.
Yeah.
He's standing inches from, or at least a foot from Priest, and suddenly, like David Copperfield or Houdini, boom, gone.
Well, the camera cuts, and it's wider, and he's suddenly not there.
Right.
But what's interesting also about that scene is we learn what Priest was doing with the two guys in the bar.
Right.
And his line is,
pretty interesting.
You take me out, I take you out. I got the very best killers.
White killers.
He's beating him in his own game, basically.
Right. But in the end, he rides off in the sunset with the black girlfriend and lives the life that he wants to live. And it's interesting because, it could almost be a Sidney Lumet film.
Yeah.
Very New York.
70s.
You know, the corrupt cops type thing.
Yep.
And what's going on, underneath.
I mean, that was the time of Serpico,
right.
Early 70s.
Right.
There was a lot like the Knapp Commission,
right.
which is in Serpico. It's like all the police corruption. Right. Really interesting for an early 71.
I was very impressed.
72 black exploitation film. It's really got a point of view.
I had seen it before.
Yeah.
But, watching again, because I knew we were going to do this, especially impressed with what they did with the budget.
It works because of the handheldness, the people looking at the camera.
It makes New York City look as gritty as it was.
If you did this film in Hollywood and got all these extras, they would all look fake.
No.
It would just be like some...
That's why Shaft... Right. It's actually not as good. It's a much bigger production, MGM production. It's a Hollywood movie and has all the budget, but this has more grit to it. It's far more interesting to watch.
Well, that's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Ornowitz for his music.
And of course, our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.